Welcome to the Virtual Memories Show. I'm your host, Gil Roth, and we're here to preserve and promote culture, one weekly conversation at a time. You can subscribe to the Virtual Memories Show through iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, Google Play, and a whole bunch of other venues. Just visit our sites, chimeraobscura.com/VM or vmspod.com to find more information, along with our RSS feed. And follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at VMSPod. Well, I made it through last week, and I've managed to bring you a new episode, which is some kind of achievement. The annual conference I run and organize and produce and host and everything else was last Thursday and Friday in Maryland, so I made the 250-mile drive down there on Wednesday with one of my friends who I've talked about before, a guy I met through work but has turned out to be one of the closest people in my life and a great reader. And I got to say, despite the incredible sense of burnout that I've been dealing with, the event was a hit. The day one sessions, day one was like 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. and then a reception and then a networking dinner. Those sessions on day one were just home run after home run, and it was tremendous. And my attendees were just praising the crap out of me afterwards for putting it together. And I get where they were coming from. Like I got why everything was working and what everybody was getting out of it. And I managed not to focus just on the minute things that went wrong or that I did wrong. But still, I found it a little tough to just, take the compliment. Like anytime somebody would do that, I'm like, yeah, that's great. I've got more stuff to take care of. But this thing happened the night before that primed me for all this. Even though I was in this haze and this sort of burned out thing from the past couple of months. See, I had dinner with a couple of my attendees, including that friend of mine I drove down with. It was just four of us, just shooting the breeze, enjoying a meal, trading war stories. One of them was a quality person at a company that made the COVID vaccines, and she told us some tales of what it meant to work in the middle of Operation Warp Speed and get this stuff out in the incredible sense of pride at, saving the world. But that wasn't it. Well, the thing was when we got back to the hotel after, and we were walking through and we passed the hotel restaurant. It's this open plan sort of area. And I noticed that the people from one of my Japanese member companies were there having a late dinner. And I went over to greet them, and I've known them for years. And they're the people who flew me and my wife out to Japan in 2020 for this incredible visit right before the world ended under lockdown. But this time my hair was all crazy and wild. I was in this shorts and a big pullover and not looking like I usually look at these events. And they were happy to see me. And I thanked them for coming out here for the conference. And what happened was when I got back to my room, I thought, I know they scheduled a couple of client meetings around this, but they came out here because of me and the conference that I've built. And, Gil, it really doesn't matter how burned out you are, how midlifey or wonky or whatever the hell is going on in your head. They came here for this thing. You have to put on the best show you can for them, which maybe ties into the Salinger episode last week with the fat lady listening to the radio show. But it's not that. It's that, like I was talking about with the COVID stuff, that sense of pride, that sense I built something. They care enough about it to travel across the world. I got to put on something really good for them. So that carried me into the next morning, which is fortunate because conspiracy of factors, including my having dinner late, kept me from getting any sleep that night. I was once again physically wrecked, but I headed downstairs at about 8:30 in my suit and slicked back hair, looking much more professional. And I was totally fired up to put on a great conference for everyone. After, setting up the AV, the laptop, making sure the Zoom connection and the external camera were set up right, and hanging the agenda posters and the sponsorship stuff, and setting up the table for people to pick up their badges and all the other crazy stuff that I do. Like I said, I run the whole shebang, but it was fantastic. Like, people had a great time, and the Japanese people came over at the end of day 2 to bring me the gift they had brought from Japan. They brought Amy some lovely mugs done in this great artisanal mode that's probably 1,000 years old. And for me, they brought a whole bunch of the crazy flavors of Kit Kats that they only make in Japan, because they knew how much I enjoyed them when I was there in 2020. So anyway, the whole thing was fantastic. People had a great time. I did fine at the lectern, introducing speakers, queuing up slides, interviewing one of the guests, doing a panel. And we had a fun networking dinner and a good turnout on day 2, because some people leave after the first day, but, day 2 only runs 8 a.m. to noon. So that's kind of a really compressed time frame. And I let my hair down for that one, and I tied up the top of it, not in a top knot, but just, behind. It looked sort of like a mullet, but it worked okay. Anyway, after that, we finished. I loaded the car, changed from suit back into shorts, T-shirt, and sneakers while sitting in the driver's seat with nobody in the car and not moving. Picked up my pal at the front desk, and we drove back to his place, and then the last 90 minutes back home for me. And I'd have felt better, I think. Like, I got what we accomplished, but I was still in this anhedonic haze that I couldn't enjoy something. So that was a problem. But the flip side of what happened when I saw my friends from Namakos was after I got back home. See, I unloaded the car, unpacked my gear and clothes, put everything away, and I just went to wash my face in the bathroom. And when I pressed the towel to my face to dry off, with my palms kind of pressing my eyes and my forehead, I just started sobbing. And not tears or noise, but, those paroxysms, the whole body just convulsing like that. And that went on for like 3 or 4 shakes, spasms, whatever. And then it stopped, or I stopped. And I found myself wondering why that happened. I mean, I was so fried at that point after the stress of the show itself, after 5.5 hours of driving, the bad eating that I had done, or not eating enough, and everything else. I just couldn't tell. Was it sadness or joy at how well everything went, or relief that it was over, despair at the idea that I had just consigned myself to another year of this, doing it all over again, or something else. And I look back at it now, and I it's all just rewrites and revision. There's no idea what was happening in the moment. All I know is my body and maybe my mind had this sort of automatic reaction. I guess, again, the result of all of this activity, all of this franticness of the last few months, combined with all the other stuff I've had going on. And now I'm back to abnormal. And the next day was a day-long hiking and driving expedition in the Catskills. I wrote about that in Sunday's newsletter. I think it helped, given having physical rigors to go through was a lot better than all of the mental stuff I'd been juggling all this time. But it all brings us to this week's show. See, I had nothing scheduled for this week because of, again, all the stuff I had going on. But our past guest, Dmitry Samarov, who some of you know from his 135 past appearances on the Virtual Memory Show, volunteered to talk with me about his new book, Making Pictures is How I Talk to the World. I was in the middle of the networking dinner on Thursday night when I got a text saying, "Hey, man, if you don't have anybody for this week, I'm around." And so we set it up. Making Pictures is a self-published survey of Dmitry's art. The back cover says from 1986 to 2024. And it's amazing. Dmitry brings us a variety of genres and media that he's worked in over the decades, and it's figure paintings, rooms, cityscapes, pets, bookshelves, his bar and concert sketches, a couple of still lifes, the scenes on the CTA, the metro in Chicago where he lives, along with his illustration and design work. And it's oils, gouache, watercolor, ballpoint pen, markers, sumi ink, charcoal, collage. I'm sure I'm missing other media that he's worked with, but it all brings together this body of work, this incredible amount of art he's made over the course of his life. And he writes accompanying text, but not in any sort of, this is what I was going for way, or, this is the art jargon, blah, 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 of the meaning of his art. There's none of that. It's more about his history with those different genres and his own explorations in art, where the work starts, sometimes what he discovers as a series of things progresses, or why he's making one thing and not another. And how the years have changed his work. That's what's so great about this book. Everything's dated, and you can see, in some cases, I don't want to say progression, because we talk about why progression is not his mode of seeing things, but the way he got better, and the things he learned to let go in the later work, sometimes doing genres that he hadn't done in 15 or 20 years, going back to them, and you see things can be looser but better. It's something I've talked about with artists as they get older. Do they find that they don't need to be as fine as they once were, that they understand the essences of what they're trying to get at, not the perfect analog detail, I guess. But the whole thing's this wonderful commentary, the text that manages not to distract from the art. You can lose yourself in the visual pieces without reading any of the text. But it is good to have those as introductions to each section, the way he writes them and lays them out. And he's a good writer. We first connected in like 2013 or 2014 for the Cabbie book that he had done. Accomplished writer, lifetime artist. And making pictures is how I talk to the world gets at that whole thing that you've experienced from me in the last bunch of years, that question of whether what we do with our lives meant something, or at least whether it's going to outlast us. What will we be remembered for? And that's Dmitry answers that in this book more than any of the others, I think. He really shows us the stages and the forms of an artist over decades, the work that he's just devoted his life to, whether or not there's a great material reward to it all. So I wish I had any skill in describing his actual art beyond it's representational. Also, he has an amazing eye for composition and light. We've got a couple of his pieces here, including memorials for two of my greyhounds. An old teacher of his said he had a quote-unquote seductive drawing line. So I guess that's something. And the sketches that he includes, not just the painted art and the other pieces, like the charcoal stuff, the sketches, he usually puts those in his newsletter also. And I just plots over those things constantly. I for my scant work at drawing, and I can't imagine, being able to see as well as he does and represent things as well with lines on paper. Anyway, you have to see it for yourself. Trust me, the work is worth it. Go get Making Pictures is How I Talk to the World. Again, self-published by Dmitry, and I'll have links to where you can get it at the end of the show. Now, here is a bio for Dmitry. Dmitry Samarov was born in Moscow, USSR in 1970. He immigrated to the U.S. with his family in 1978. He got in trouble in first grade for doodling on his Lenin Red Star pin and hasn't stopped doodling since. After a false start at Parsons School of Design in New York, he graduated with a BFA in painting and printmaking from the School of the Art Institute of Chicago in 1993. Upon graduation, he promptly began driving a cab, first in Boston, then, after a time, in Chicago. which eventually led to the publication of his illustrated work memoirs, Hack, Stories from a Chicago Cab, and Where To, a hack memoir. Music to My Eyes is his first non-cabbie-related book. Soviet Stamps is the second. All Hack is a summation of his cabbie-related work. Old Style is his first work of fiction. He's exhibited his work in all manner of bars, coffee shops, libraries, and even the odd gallery when he's really hard up. He writes dog portraits and paints book reviews in Chicago, Illinois. And now, the 2024 Virtual Memories Conversation with Dmitry Samarov. Thank you, man. Thanks for bailing me out. You were you picked up on my secret bat signal for this.
No, I saw that.
No.
I heard it.
It was deliberately directed toward you. That's the thing. I should hit up Dmitry, but I got so much going on. But if I hint that I don't have somebody set for next week, I'm hoping he picks up on that signal, being one of the only people who listens in real time to the show. So thank you for justifying my familiarity and friendship with you and the way I sort of get where you're coming from with some of this stuff. So,
yeah, no, I'm happy to pitch in, and always grateful when you ask me back, since I'm trying to, this is my 75th appearance on your show or something.
I have down as 248th, but you're probably right. That's
it's the new math. Yeah.
So tell me, what prompted the book? Making Pictures is How I Talk to the World. What led you to make a retrospective?
I think it was just an accumulation of things. I guess I'd for a while wanted some sort of to make a coffee table book, a survey, and because I'd just been sort of drifting back towards try to reconcile the visual art with the verbal art into one thing. The drift generally is back towards the visual, so it seemed like a natural. And then also, I'd been seeing sort of advancements in digital printing and like affordable digital printing over the last few years. Like, this book wouldn't have been possible at the price point that I was able to swing, even a few years ago.
Yeah, and it looks great. The reproductions look really good. I know it's still
It looks pretty good. Yeah. I mean, it wasn't a cheap book to print, but it was a hell of a lot cheaper than it used to be, and I didn't have to send away to China like most places.
Yeah,
the bigger publishers do it, and for longer runs, I understand why. But I wasn't quite prepared to be dealing with people overseas.
Yeah.
So Michigan's far enough away. From Illinois to Michigan's about as far as I want to go.
I have guests whose books either got stopped, the printer refused in China. That happened with Peter Rostovsky because there was something that was
content?
Ideological. Yeah. And it wasn't a China statement. I think it was something about organizing and protesting against the administration in hell. And Howard Chaykin had a book that got printed, they had to wait for it to get, enough items had to get loaded into a single shipping container. And then the Suez Canal thing hit. Basically, it was like a year and a half from the time they printed it to the time it got to California. So, yes, congratulations. Good on sticking with Michigan. But yeah, what was the moment of saying, I want this self-survey? And then, sort of what went into the curation, figuring out what you wanted to include and what stuff was going to actually work and be representative?
A lot of it was really, really very practical. Like what do I have a decent enough digital scan of that may or may not print? And that's the amazing thing, is that I have things in there that were shot with an iPad camera.
Wow.
Yeah. Which is an iPad is 96 DPI.
It reproduces well. I guess maybe it's some of your line work also, or the color that manages to convey.
Yeah, the darks are where it suffers the most. Like the darks aren't great, in it, but overall, like it's something I can live with. But yeah, basically that's criteria one is like, do I have a reproduction that will actually scan?
Yeah.
And I printed them out at home, on my home printer just to see beforehand. And some just unfortunately were not nearly good enough. And I have a lot of work that's not documented or poorly documented. So that's one. And then, I have a website that has thousands of images. So I have a kind of a framework or structure for the different motifs, for the different genres of kinds of pictures that I make.
Mm-hmm.
So there was already a structure.
Yeah, sort of categories in place. Yeah.
The categories in place. Then it was just a matter of culling and kind of adding and subtracting, and how long of a book did I want? How big of a book did I want? But there's a little bit of writing in the book, and I start out with the statement that somebody else should be writing and publishing this thing, and I still think that, but nobody did, so I had to do it.
Yeah. I've only recently started to encounter, and I've written about it in the newsletter, people who are treating what I do as something that should be like documented, like beyond just the archive of what I do. And it's that moment of, I'm not the important one. It's the guest. And then there's that sense of, yeah, I guess there should be someone on the outside saying, hey, Gil, how did you do X, Y, and Z? And, but again, it's all going to end up being me publishing something because no one's going to make that effort to figure out, what the hell was going on.
Well, you never know. You never know. But like with a, newer medium like podcasting, I guess it's kind of newfangled radio or freeform radio or something. But like, how do you preserve that, or what kind of artifact do you make out of it?
Yeah.
With painting, drawing, it's simpler. It's simple. You make a book.
In your case, what did you learn? I mean, I know you mentioned in the book that there's no progression, or that looking like Mark Twain at the beginning of Huck Finn. Anyone looking for a plot will be shot. But I know you don't subscribe to that sense of there is an arc to your work, or something that's definable or effable. But what did you start to see when you were really, again, that culling process? What did you learn in the process of putting yourself together?
Well, there's change. There's absolutely change. And I don't know. I guess progression implies like you start at the bottom and you end up at the top.
Yeah, that there's some refinement that's all headed to something, and that's not you. So.
And that it is headed up, like better,
Hmm.
And that's, it's not that there may be that, but I don't think it's my place to judge the artwork that I've shared with people, even like included or not included in this book. I've deemed good enough to maybe be judged by others, and then other people have to judge it. But I think I just strove to, in each of the categories, to show some kind of representative sample. I was not surprised, but reminded that there's kinds of motifs or whatever subjects or ways of working that I just don't do anymore.
Yeah.
That I used to do more,
Were those conscious departures, or did you just sort of drift out of certain things?
No, I've never ever been like an idea or methodical a planner that way.
Mm-hmm.
It's always a reaction or an intuitive choice. And then I have to look back afterwards and see, oh, look at that. I'm not doing these pictures of rooms anymore. Why is that?
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like for whatever reason, this current place I've lived in, I'm in my 5th year in my current place, and I just haven't been making pictures of this space nearly as much as some of the other places. I still don't quite understand why, but it is definitely so. For a time, for years, like my main activity was these pictures of rooms, the rooms I lived in. And that's sort of been mostly absent the last few years. But it's a little bit of a mystery.
Yeah. Is it the sort of thing that you're I don't want to say afraid, but we'll just say afraid. If you really start plumbing to try to figure that out, it's going to kill whatever it is that you're actually doing in the present.
Yeah, there's a bit of that. I'm wary of getting to the bottom or to find an explanation that you can say in words or write in words would kill whatever the engine is or the impetus. I remember, so I've never taken a real writing class, but one time I did a workshop with Linda Berry, and I was for a couple of days, and a friend of mine was organizing it, so I got to sit in for free, which is
cool.
Really generous of them to allow me to do. But I realized during that, like during doing some of the exercises and what my classmates were finding so inspiring, the kind of questions that she was and prompts that she was running us through were things that would destroy the way I work. Would just kill me. Like I have my methods of working, and asking certain kind of questions just like derails the process.
Yeah.
And that's weird, or it may seem like not precious, but like I don't know how to describe it exactly. But if you've been doing a thing for decades and you keep making stuff, then there's some kind of method to the madness, and you have to trust that.
Right.
And you know what I mean?
Do you feel like the vibe in the room was more, I hate to use the term amateur, but, were they more amateur artists who were, in a sense, looking for permission,
Well, I think what the methodology works best for Linda's and probably a lot of teachers is for people who are either starting out or trying to rekindle an interest in creativity that they feel is lacking, or they don't know where to start or how to start. And those are things that have just never been a problem for me.
Right.
Like it's a thing I've been swimming in my whole life. And that's why I want to stress that what she's doing and other inspiring teachers do is really, really important.
Yeah.
And I would never downplay it. It's just not for me.
Right. You've already reached that baseline of being able to function and keep making art. So, yeah.
It's the other things I'm not good at, the life things I'm not more of an amateur at.
there's practical stuff, there's art world stuff, etc. But yeah, I get you. But it's like you're trying to show in this book, it's the art that's going to survive. Did you? Is that legacy sense what drives this? What drives the book project in particular? The sense that there should be a gathering if you get hit by a bus tomorrow or subway train.
Definitely, yeah. I've definitely over the last few years started thinking of what will be left behind, for sure, because there's definitely a lot less sand in the hourglass left than there was to start with. I don't know how long I've got left, but it's a finite amount, and I've done all this work. And I think some attempt to organize it or encapsulate it felt warranted.
Yeah. Now, I know we said there's no progression, or no that progression isn't a concept you're interested in. But were there moments of, oh, that's when I figured out X, Y, or Z? Looking back like that, that's when I started, figure either perspective or whatever the hell it is. In retrospect, do you see those sorts of breaks happen, or were things just more incremental and overlapping?
Mostly overlapping and incremental. The bigger surprise is how far back the roots of some of the newer stuff go. Mm-hmm. Like I discovered sort of collage things that I'd tried out when I was very young, and I had no memory of it. And collage is a thing I really got into like during COVID lockdown. Yeah. I went into it hard, which was only 4 years ago, right?
Yeah.
But I have pieces going back to when I was a teenager that are mixed media. Just as it was a surprise years ago to learn from, like this third grade autobiography homework assignment that I predicted that I'd be a artist and a writer.
Yeah.
The artist was a no-brainer. The writer was a complete shock to me.
Yeah. This is
But
like
I had that kind of.
I was going to say, it's like the Nicholas Delbanco episode I did a few weeks ago where the fourth grade writing project on the history of art that he uncovered 45 pages of his writing about this stuff turned out to be, I wrote that well when I was 10. Reading it, I'm like, are you sure his parents didn't help? But whatever. It's still the roots were there going way, way back. So.
No, I mean, luckily or unluckily, I have parents that saved, artwork and other kind of ephemera of mine. That I was able to look back on, over the years. So I have some kind of timeline, that I can refer to, evidence of once. Yeah, I don't know how else you say, but progression.
Yeah.
Or there's
a
breadcrumb trail.
I use unfolding. That to me is a much better metaphor for what our lives are like. It's a question of whether there's just one single thing at the core that we keep unfolding and eventually reveal. But, at least there's more of a sense of an outward expansion as opposed to a linear, progression.
It's what, I don't know what kind of, I don't know if it's a Mobius strip or a, concentric circles or something, but there's things that go back to, like the last couple of years, I've started doing oil paintings like in my backyard or around my house, but outside. And they're the kind of like cityscapes that I used to do when I was in art school. But they're definitely not exactly the same. I feel like there's more facility to them, but they're also faster and less interested in surface detail.
Yeah.
They're more abstract than they used to be. And that's definitely a change.
Yeah, I found that part fascinating in the book when you wrote about the bookshelf paintings and how you realized that they were sort of opening you into another mode, a more abstract one, and one that integrates, in some cases, the verbal with the visual again. That sense of not knowing that was happening or that was why you were doing this, that there wasn't a why, but that this was, the result.
No, I
that
had
you were
no
discovering.
idea. I blunder into these things, and some of them work, and some of them have to be cast aside. But when I started doing the bookshelf paintings in the late 90s, like 97, 98 or so, I think is the first one. I mean, I have evidence. I have earlier paintings and drawings that have bookshelves in them, and stacks of books. But to just concentrate on the arrangement of books on a bookshelf, well, at first, the idea or whatever the impetus was to do a still life without setting up a still life, which is a thing that I always disliked, was the setting up, which telegraphs meaning in a way that I'm not interested in. Yeah. Like, a traditional still life, say, like a memento mori or, vanitas or something. You'll have your skull and you have things that stand in for other things. That way of kind of controlling meaning is not how I work. Yeah. Instead, these are fragments, or they're objects that are part of my everyday life, and they're mutable. They change because a bookshelf to me is an active piece of furniture, or like it's a part of my life that I interact with every day. So it changes all the time. But the thing that would point to a more abstract way of working, the shallow space and the arrangement of pieces of color in ways that don't occur in my pictures of interiors or portraits or cityscapes or coffee shops. I had no idea. It was a thing that I had to confront, and it pointed the way forward to what I would start doing in the collages over 20 years later.
I have one of your bookshelf paintings here at home, which I'm I'm happy you got my cultural amnesia and a few other ones there. So,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. There's a chance to sort of, if not quote, but like remark on particular titles, the spines, and
what they
I
mean.
always take.
Yeah, and where they're caught in time, because that's the other aspect of what you talk about in the book is that sort of cinematic effect you're trying to get that in terms of capturing an expanse of time in a single moment, and that doesn't have to be a street scene or watching a band and sketching them. It can be what those books mean in that instant in which they're aligned the way they are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because this book being next to that book, sort of, there's a friction and a tension and a back and forth, and that's certainly interesting to me. Exploring just formally, if not in any deeper way, and so people don't get the wrong idea. I'm not some kind of strict formalist. I'm not Ad Reinhardt who believes that, art is only about, like, painting's only about paint, things like that. I was just reading. I have a book of Ad Reinhardt writings, which are kind of hilarious, because he was such a shit talker. Like these guys, that just had these set ideas.
Mm-hmm.
He at least half of it was fucking with people, I'm convinced. But he basically says everybody but him is doing the wrong kind of painting.
Of course.
And his painting is one color, with no brush strokes visible.
Yeah.
And anybody not doing that is like a regressive moron, basically. And I'm far from that. I don't believe in that kind of purity, but I also am very, very against starting with an idea or injecting meaning into a thing that it has to somehow, it's part and parcel. The meaning, the form, and the content have to be wedded together, like in a way that they can't be separated for me, for a thing to work,
Got it. You mentioned, I think in the introduction, how most artists' memoirs are not, we'll just say not worth reading. You talk some shit about a lot of the, at least in terms of how the artist trying to tell you about their artwork is at best useless, at worst colors your impression of the art itself and wrecks everything. Have you encountered any artist writings that are actually illuminating along those lines? Or again, is your experience of art so tied into the direct interaction of the eye and the work that having any sort of verbal groundwork, even if it's after the fact, is that?
No, there's definitely some artists who wrote really well. Sometimes some artists wrote better than they painted. Like Ad Reinhardt's colleague Barnett Newman, who was a pretty mediocre painter, but boy, could he talk and write. What a character he was. His book is great. If you ever have a chance, I forget what it's called. I don't know if I kept that one. I can get to it later. I'm going through this thing where I'm getting rid of my whole library.
I was going to ask about that too. Yeah.
We can talk about that later. But Barnett Newman could write, and a few others. There's a guy named Fairfield Porter. There's a really great. He was an art critic and a painter, and painted. I don't know if you're familiar with his work.
No. I'm looking him up right now, which is the one advantage of doing these remotely. But yeah.
Yeah, I think you might be into it. He was kind of an interest. He came from a wealthy family. He was kind of a gentleman painter, but he came of age in the time of abstract expressionism, but painting these interiors and like everyday life paintings.
Yeah, they're very representative.
Very inspired by French post-impressionism, like Bonnard and Vuillard, Matisse, people like that. But he has a book called Art in Its Own Terms, which is a collection of his reviews and kind of essays, which was very, very influential to me. It sort of continues to be It's one of the books I'm keeping, actually, not throwing away or selling.
De-accessioning is how we try and make it sound
Oh,
smart.
okay.
So, but really, getting rid of is it.
I don't run that
Yeah,
that
museum
particular
like a library.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
I'm
the first
not a
time I heard
museum.
somebody say, "I'm de-accessioning some of my clothing," I'm like, "You're giving stuff to a thrift store, right? That's you're just getting rid of stuff."
I use the word cull in one of the newsletters about it.
I often use I refer to it as the book cull periodically, which I've got several stacks of. I've got to go to the box. There's a bin where they collect books, which is always funny to me because I don't think they're looking to collect the books that I'm getting rid of. But that's fine. But tell me about that.
Is it your town that keeps the bin?
It's a town or two over. I forget. It's some like veterans thing, and it's just like, I'm not sure these are the books they want, but they're the books that I don't need in my house anymore. So
it'll go up. And do they run a thrift store or something?
No idea where it all goes. Might go to some sort of demonic ritual that they pulp everything into and make into some grand sigil. I have no idea. All I know is I'm getting rid of the books.
Come to our weekend Crystal Knock bonfire.
Could be one of those Wicker Man things. God knows. It would make sense. Building an entire man full of books and putting me right in the middle and lighting it up would be pretty apropos. Up on top of a fire tower in the Catskills, which is now my hangout place. Apparently,
right? Since you run up fire towers every weekend. Apparently,
go figure. It's just nuts.
What I hear.
It is bananas. But tell me about the drive to start getting rid of books and clearing out your library.
Yeah, that's another thing that's been building for a while, and it's probably part of the the retrospective, looking back, summing up thing, So I've kept and collected, especially really nice art books for decades, but for a while now I've been aware that they're sitting on my bookshelf and I don't look at them anymore, not very often. So then the logical next thought is, well, maybe they shouldn't be here anymore. That coupled with the fact that I've been working in a used bookstore the last couple of years pretty regularly. Yeah. So I'm around books all the time. And this thought that we're this kind of in between place, hoping to find a new home for these things, has made me decide that a home where a thing is not being used is not the right home for them anymore. Yeah. And it's not like my home is not a place, like I don't throw dinner parties here. This is a place where I work. And if I'm not using these things, then they shouldn't be here. That's my thinking about it. So I've been on this research and photographing JAG for last couple of months, seeing what these things are worth, and the higher end items are on eBay. People can find my eBay shop. I have like 100 books up there.
I'll put a link in the show notes for this. So yeah.
And the rest go to the bookstore or to people I know. I've been doing that for a few years now. As soon as I finish a book, if I don't think I'm going to be using it for anything, or just thinking of the next person that might like it and sending it or giving it to them like right away, not taking it back home. And this is an extension of that for sure.
How's it changed your space?
It's changed it a lot. It's like one of those like dominoes falling things. So as soon as the bookshelf emptied, I decided to try to turn the bookshelf, which is then made me move this giant office desk that I had in back of it, that was in a separate. So my living space is it's the bottom floor of an 1875 workers' cottage, like an A-frame little house, but it was kind of got rehabbed a few years ago. So it's kind of like a lot, like a work-live loft kind of thing. It's just one open space, but the middle of it is narrower, and that's where I had the desk by the bookcase. So I moved this desk up here next to where I'm sitting, and it's opened up the rest of the space somehow. And none of that would have been possible if I hadn't emptied this bookshelf and turned it. It's kind of an amazing thing, and I feel real dumb that it took me this long to figure out.
When we're on the inside, it's whether it's spatial or conceptual, it's real tough to conceive of what something can be, with a couple of tweaks, because it's what we're accustomed to.
Yeah, after the office desk moved here, then the other work surfaces. So I have a variety of. I have a kind of a drafting table that I draw at. Then I have another drafting table that I do other things on that's flat. Everything is moved around and now feels much roomier. It's not a big place that I have, but it feels new, and it feels kind of full of possibilities the way it wasn't before. And I think you don't realize it, but keeping things the same sometimes makes you kind of stagnant.
Yeah.
In your inside in ways that you just don't notice until you kind of push something and it frees things up.
Yeah. Reconfiguring the library and office down here maybe 2 years ago was one of those. I knew I needed to do this. Like some part of my brain knew I needed to there are certain parameters I have to keep in place, including the giant sofa that the dog sleeps on, which precludes me from making some changes. But yeah, that sense of, this opened everything up, gave me space to do X, Y, and Z. I can actually draw/paint in one corner, in a way that I kind of had to move everything temporarily every time I wanted to do something. But, but as you know, I don't do too much. So.
Yeah, for a couple of years now, I have this table that has all my kind of drawing and other gear next to this to the drafting table, but it was positioned blocking the bay window, so there was a space beyond there that I couldn't reach, but it was I used kind of for storage, and it was kind of gathering dust, and I couldn't reach it. And by turning these things to the side, I can now get to this window, and it feels like a fucking revolution. It's the stupidest, most obvious thing, and it's taken me over 4 years to figure out the right way these things should go.
Again, we're dummies in our own lives, so.
Oh yeah, so stupid. Yeah. I mean, I envy people. I mean, more generally, we're talking about intention or like ideas or how things start.
Yeah.
I don't. People that have either make to-do lists or have an idea and then set about to realize it, I just don't function that way.
Yeah, I had an idea for a visual art series that at least had a conceptual start. Where it was going to go was up for grabs. And it occurred to me after that, it was an excuse not to start it by saying, you've built too much of a mental framework around what it's supposed to be. Therefore, this can't be right, as opposed to actually going ahead, making the art and seeing where it goes. So I envy you with the ability to actually pursue things and not have to, again, second guess yourself about starting anything. But.
Yeah, thinking doesn't help.
No.
That's my mind.
It was an interesting concept for me. It was basically making art off of the slides. I have about 3,000 slides of photos my father took for work and for travel, either from before I was born or within that first year. Basically, before he fucked up my life in certain ways. And I thought, maybe that as a concept is a great starting point for making some art. Look at some of these photographs of fish and everything else he was doing, these great aquarium shots, and make something out of that. But then it turned into, am I doing something that's, a man rebels against his father, which is really uninteresting as far as artistic motivations go.
What you need to do is wait a little while and just do one.
Yeah.
Just do one and see if you want to do another.
Yeah.
That's how I work. I do one and I say, no, well, this sucks. I'm not doing this anymore. Or this is great, or this is not quite good enough, but I think this is on the track of something. You just start pulling a thread, you know.
And then I end up with a 38-year retrospective of my work. Oh no.
That's what you do.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's different, you know, if it's a thing that you've been swimming in your whole life, like, you know, I don't remember my life without making art. That's what, you know, since, you know, maybe even before age 10, you know, is just a thing that I've been engaged with regularly for a time, trying to get away from, but like for the longest time, just resolved to just, okay, this is what I'm doing.
Yeah. And this is who you are. Yeah. It's of all oddball coincidences. I wrote about this in a newsletter earlier today. We did this Catskills Fire Tower hike yesterday, and my friend told me that there's this Russian bar, restaurant, brew house. It's by this fire tower.
Yeah, I read about it.
And there's this artist's work there. And he isn't he did a little art history in college, but, you know, we're in our 50s, doesn't remember a lot. But he mentioned, you know, it's this Russian artist. We get there, I'm looking around, and somebody named Alexander Kolyetsky, which I pronounced Koletsky, and then the Russian curator in his little gallery pronounced correctly for me, emigrated in the mid-'70s to the U.S., and I'm looking at all these paintings of what I thought were brand logos and things, and then you get close and you realize they're actually the cardboard boxes for like Budweiser cases and wine and Reebok sneaker case boxes. And apparently, as she told me, and as I looked up, that, he got to America, couldn't afford art material, so we just scavenged cardboard off the sidewalks and kept going. Now they say world famous. Of course, I haven't heard of him, which means I'm the moron here, not that he's not famous. So,
well, that's
you're world famous to me. So,
yeah.
But yes, his website has a shot of him sculpting something with Jennifer Lopez in the background. So apparently he was famous enough to be included in some art shot like that. But, you know, that sense of just making the art out of whatever was at hand. You know, it's both the materials and the conceptual material that you're working with. Just finding whatever you can and continuing to make art is something that kind of I'm envious of. I make conversation, as you know, so it's a little different than a lot different than making real art. So.
I don't know about that. I'm not gonna.
I know I'm denigrating myself. I could use that David Sally line about, you know, doing this as a way of not having to make something but still making something. So.
Yeah, I don't know. In the Mount Olympus of art, in my Mount Olympus of art, the highest art is music. It always will be, you know. Yeah. But I don't know that kind of pitting one medium against another is useful either for you or for I don't know. You know what I mean?
Oh. Anything I can do to beat myself up, I'll take the opportunity.
I know. So. It's your favorite sport. I'm aware.
Well, I can't hate myself. Who will? Yeah.
I know. Well, as long as you're getting your jollies, then I'm happy.
But yeah, it's still that sense of again, working with whatever you have at hand. It's like when I sat down with Joe Coleman a few weeks ago, earlier this summer, and just when I realized that he's only painted, he will only paint on wood, and why he will only paint on wood, and exactly how he paints, and I started to see some of the pieces close up and realized this guy is on another level in terms of the skill and what he's actually trying to make and how he's making it. That's, you know, nobody's going to say, oh, I'm going to do this Joe Coleman style piece. You know, that's not something that's replicable along those lines in terms of that gestalt of, again, the concepts he's working on, the physical materials, and the absolutely the absolutely amazing focus he brings to, you know, working on 1 square inch at a time. But
yeah, he is doing this kind of very probably a different century kind of monastic thing where you stitch a thing together bit by bit, you know. He's like a, you know, silkworm, like, you know, getting, you know, excreting silk, you know, like whatever
strand, thread, whatever it is,
millimeter at a time or whatever. I don't know what the
measurement is.
Yeah, that's And like that's a way that I could never work and have never worked,
Yeah.
this part to part thing. So he'll never do like an, all over.
Yeah. I mean,
And then,
he'll conceive of a significant central image, like the
yeah,
one of his wife, the big door frame and all that. But still, everything around it is just done piecemeal in a sense, and he'll just step
yeah.
back and decide what he wants to work on the next day. Or what,
Well, that's how. I mean, he's not the only. It's a very valid way of working. That's the way Lucian Freud worked.
Sure.
He would finish a piece and then go on to the next piece. That's why they're so weirdly kind of contorted.
Yeah.
And the strange proportions of them,
Mm-hmm.
because you would just laser focus on like an arm or something,
Yeah.
or a breast, and then finish that and then go on to the next thing.
Yeah.
He would never rework things,
Yeah, to unify
like,
or
to unify. Yeah.
Yeah. Or harmonize them. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Whereas that's definitely like part of my. I work all over all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. What did you did the process of looking at this stuff, bringing everything together, kind of point you anywhere in terms of, I really should work on, or I haven't paid enough attention to X?
I think, so in the few months that I was waiting for the printer to get these books back to me, and kind of stressing about how the image quality would be. Sure. And stuff, I was doing a lot of kind of custodial shit, and like that's when this the book culling project and other things started around here.
Hmm.
I think, and it's this in between rearrangement. I'm just now starting to get back to making new things, and then also the process, since the book came out, the process of trying to drum up some sort of publicity in my own,
going to festivals and doing the pushes. And,
the book festivals and the rest, and doing podcasts and get the word out. I'm just in the last couple of weeks starting to kind of once again, we're trying to establish a new routine of making things. So it's a little bit too soon to say. I'm sure there will be some sort of impact from this kind of retrospective looking back thing, how things will change. They always change. I did a new kind of quick bookshelf painting. I hadn't done a bookshelf painting in a couple of years, because I'd filled the bookshelf with an arrangement of new things that had been kind of off to the side, and now the bookshelf is a whole new organism. So I imagine that'll be a component once again.
Do you ever cheat and kind of rearrange stuff on the shelf a little bit for the sake of how it'll paint?
Not consciously, but there's just no way that it can't be lodged in there somewhere.
In the initial placing process. Yeah, I get you.
In the background, that one day I'll probably paint the thing, so there's no way not to stage manage things. But if I can fool myself into thinking I'm not doing it on purpose only to do that.
Right.
I mean, you have a finite on a bookshelf, you have a finite amount of space, and you have these things that you're trying to place in them. So those are the restrictions.
Yeah. Yeah. I just wasn't sure if once you actually settle in to start one, you'd think, let me just move that over here. And
Oh, no. I never
your
move
rules
things
are in
out.
place.
No.
Yeah.
No. That's
that
a big,
level of stage management is too false. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a big party foul in the cosmology of Dmitry. Yeah, you don't do that.
That was my.
That's cheating.
Yeah,
somehow I don't know why not doing that is not cheating, but
somehow we all set up rules for ourselves with this stuff, and it's like blind contour. I'm going to do this. It's going to be 15 minutes,
yes.
Not looking down. And by the way, Wayne White told me I need to start doing that, and it's going to help my drawing immeasurably. Did you find it useful?
Drawing?
Yeah.
Man, I haven't done one in so long.
But did it help when you first engaged in it, do you find? Because, I haven't made enough time for anything.
It's a useful exercise.
Yeah.
Like anything, after a while, you'll end up with shortcuts or tricks,
Oh, yeah, but he was just saying just learning to do this is going to make your regular drawing. You're going to be a better artist for this skill, and that was one of those.
Yes, because what it does is it gets you out of the self-consciousness of your limitation. Like, since you're not looking at what you're doing, you're just reacting physically to what you're looking at. Yeah, so it's valuable that way, for sure. I do stuff like, especially in the collages, I do stuff with stencils and other kind of like design tools to screw with to kind of regularize my line or formalize it in ways that I wouldn't do it freehand.
Yeah.
To break patterns that I know I fall into,
With the collage thing, is there ever not to get all mystical, but that Burroughs sense of cut up, revealing something underneath, something you weren't intending, or do you look at it in those terms after the fact?
After the fact, yeah. There's things that are revealed, but also, I mean, it would be surprised if they weren't, because the elements that I'm using are almost exclusively personal.
Yeah.
I mean, I use things that are from my life one way or another. So combining them in even an intuitive way can't help but produce
different combinations and different meanings that.
And I mean, and broadly, that's what I want from any kind of picture I'm doing.
Yeah.
I want it to add up to something more than where I started from. And it's the opposite of the thing of having an idea and then executing it.
Yeah.
Like the most boring kind of thing to me is like Rene Magritte.
Mm-hmm.
So Rene Magritte hated painting. He was an idea guy. He was basically, writers love Magritte because he's like the most literary painter.
Yeah, I get you.
But all he was about was having these ideas. Mm-hmm. And the actual painting is like, as a painter, he was just a pretty good illustrator,
Yeah.
And you could just tell that it was just a chore for him. And I'm sort of the opposite of that,
Gotcha. Yeah. Are there artists you've reevaluated, either in a good way, or there's always the ones we are embarrassed that we once loved, writers, artists, whatever, but are there artists you've come around on that you didn't get in your mature phase?
I think, I mean, there are artists that have become more important to me, or like I've gotten more interested in, and like, so when I really dove into this collage thing, I started looking once again for kind of advice or pointers, from the masters, and the greatest one to me is Kurt Schwitters.
Yeah.
Kurt Schwitters, I think, is the best collage artist who ever was, and that's one of the very few art books I'm not getting rid of, because I bought it during that time that I started doing collage, and I'd been aware of him before, but once you start on a mode of working, and then you look at the masters of that working, you just gain a new appreciation. It's kind of the same as like during lockdown again, like I reread a couple of favorite books from earlier in my life, which were Underworld by DeLillo and Cormac McCarthy's Suttree.
Yeah.
But reading those books as somebody attempting to do writing is a completely different ballgame.
Sure. Yeah.
Than as just a reader. I think Schwitters is a big one for me.
Are those last two McCarthy books worth diving into? Stella Maris and the Passenger. I can't remember. I think
Stella Maris.
Yeah.
Stella Maris is amazing. The Passenger is horrible.
Okay.
That's my take.
Gotcha.
Although people think The Passenger is the main book and Stella Maris is the kind of amuse-bouche or like add-on at the end.
Mm-hmm.
because they interact with each other.
Yeah.
But Stella Maris to me was a revelation. And actually, okay, I cheated and I listened to it on audio book.
Yeah,
but
it's valid.
But Stella Maris is just it's unique in his whole in all his work. It's an interview. It's just speech.
Yeah,
and he's sort of famous for people having people that can barely say anything, and is just talking. And he gets rid of all the kind of Cormac McCarthy quirks,
yeah,
this kind of like Baroque Faulknerisms, like it's all gone, and it's just two people talking. And I was blown. I couldn't believe it, how good that was.
Okay. I figure, me, with the extracurricular reading I do, it's I give myself projects, as you know.
He's gonna be a hard get.
Yeah, that's with the Ouija board. Even before his death, it would be tough. But yeah, so figuring out non-podcast stuff to read, it's I could dive into these, but
it's a quick one. I mean, so yeah, it's a short book. Yeah, it was kind of a revelatory. Mm. I didn't see that one coming, but for art, I guess Schwitter's is a big one.
And nobody used to just hate who you now get I've come around on this person.
Nobody quite lately. I mean, I was late to I remember as a teenager, and for a while I didn't get Matisse at all.
Sure.
I thought he was just doing pretty pictures, and sometime in the middle of art school it clicked for me, and he became really, really important. Yeah. And he's never not been.
Right. Yeah. We had our Matisse experience. It was Matisse, right? We saw at the Red Room. We saw.
Oh yeah, that little show. Was it MoMA? Or?
I was going to say it was MoMA.
I think it was MoMA.
I'm in a daze at this point from all the crazy shit going on in my life, but I had the reconstructing. Yep, no, that's where we were. Okay, MoMA and food trucks. That's the two things I remember. So.
Right, we ate lunch outside there, around the corner.
Yeah.
So. Yeah. Matisse is sort of definitely one of the guiding lights. There hasn't been a big reappraisal. I had a minor reappraisal a while ago now with the Picasso sculpture show, mm-hmm. which was maybe at MoMA. It was somewhere in New York, maybe the Met. And I really kind of dislike Picasso pretty intensely, but I really enjoyed that show.
Yeah.
And that was a shock.
You got reaction to the book? People anyone who doesn't know your work particularly well, picked it up at a festival or something? Have you heard from anybody?
Oh, yeah. The people that pick it up really, really like it.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, wow. There's something, and I know this. You can point somebody to a website, and I have a website with literally thousands of pages.
Right.
And you could tell them that, and they nod, and maybe they'll flip through a couple of things. But if you give them a tangible thing, a book full of things, it has an impact that is real.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, wow. And then they look at me, it's like, wow, you did all this? And I'm like, yep.
Somehow.
The fraction of what I've done. And it's not, it's hard not to, you say a thing like that and you're kind of showing off, or there's an arrogance, but it's just it's a fact that I made all this stuff. And I'd like people to know about it. And maybe that's hubris or whatever, but when people look at it, most people are impressed, which is nice.
I get to me, it's one of those. It's a really good reproduction of the work. The text accompanies it well without trying to beat you over the head with anything, and you get a nice variety of the types, both the types of we'll say genres and the different media you worked in. That to me, it looks great, and I got to figure out how to foist it off on people who, you may not know this guy, but if you listen to the show, he's got this collection of art now. So.
Yeah, the big complaint so far is for my friend Mallory, who I co-host a horror movie podcast with.
Yeah.
She complains that it doesn't fit well on her bookshelf because, it's a horizontal book.
I've got a side bookshelf for all the art, well, not all, but a bunch of the art books, exactly for that reason. It's one of those, it's tall, it's oblong, I can put the art stuff there, and everything else is, trade paperbacks and hardcovers. So,
yeah, my joke is that it's an end table book. I couldn't quite
not coffee table, but end table.
Yeah, an end table book. But then she says her end table is not big enough to hold it, and I said that's a defect in her end table.
Yeah, tell her she's got to start upgrading her life at that point. It's not you, it's her. So.
I know. Yeah. So that's been the only complaint so far, which is hilarious. No, it's been good. It's been gratifying. I mean, it's funny to do. It's a new challenge as far as publicity or promotion. Like when you do, say, a podcast, it's generally a thing about books, which is filled with words, and this thing isn't. There are some words in it, but they're just introductions. Right. There's no use in talking about I don't think. Not too much use in the writing. It's a picture book, so how do you?
It's an art book, so we talk about the artist. We talk about the forms he works in, and the the way you destroyed your life for the sake of art. I'm just kidding, although not kidding, but
Well, the thing is, it's funny you say that. Destroyed. I mean, but what would it have been in the alternative? I mean, I can't even picture it. Having some sort of, I mean, I have two younger brothers, both of whom are fairly successful in their fields, much more successful than me financially, that's for sure. And I think they're reasonably happy, but I can't imagine the things they had to do and to
the
get
constraints
to where they're at.
Yeah, the way those decisions are cutting off possibilities. Yeah.
Yeah, my life is hard to explain to people how. I mean, it's pretty much laser focused on getting myself to be able to do this work. Everything else is kind of just it's noise and it's chores. The rest, it's all about. So I have to spend weeks sometimes rearranging my furniture and throwing away and selling books. But what it all is for is to clear the mental and emotional and physical space so I can make new things, which is all I'm about. That's all that I care about.
One of the things I'd wondered, basically when you talked about like landscape and not painting from the apartment for the longest time, I'm thinking of like Monet and that cathedral, Rouen, I think, the painting the same thing again and again. You mentioned that conceptually that you're painting the same aspects of the city, but I was never sure if you meant literally trying to get that same point of view and just looking at it in different lights, different times, and different eras.
It is like that. I mean, I just completed earlier this week. I made a painting in my alley of the same view I did like a year or two ago.
Yeah,
but it looks fairly different. You can see it's the same view, but the foliage is different, the light is different, a lot of things are different. But yeah, I can do that repeatedly. Like the bookshelf is a good example, although it does change. But the the outside of it, it's the same shelf every time.
Right. The shelf of Theseus. Yeah, I like that.
yeah, exactly. It's a way of checking back in and of seeing what's changed and what's the same. And yeah, if you lead a life of endless repetition, what you start noticing is like these subtle differences, and that's what I'm always going. That's what I'm always looking for.
And I know our lives are different, just work, et cetera, but just the geography, the way the first time we recorded, we were out here where I live in the woods here in New Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
And it struck me more since taking up drawing 3 years ago, the repetitions and the changes just in the wildlife, the flora, everything else. I see things a lot differently now since I learned to look. Now I see as the seasons are changing, what's coming, what's going, what its gestation is like versus its full blossom. Things are very, very different to me since I took that little plunge, picked up a pencil and a sketch pad, I guess. But yeah, it's not quite the same as the city, where I think what you are alluding to in the section on writing about the city is the sense of interacting with man and what man makes.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's the cars, buildings, all the infrastructure and everything else around you. Where to me, this is just what I inherited is much more of a natural world where, there is a collapsing, formerly retaining wall at a neighbor's house around the corner that I find fascinating because it's been there 50 years and is disintegrating as we look at it each week. But yeah, the sense of the what the natural world does around me has been more compelling in my 50s as I've started learning to look.
Yeah, it'll change. It's the polar opposite of the kind of the media environment in which most people live every day, where their life is flickering in front of them inside of their phone screen. This way of living that I've, gravitated toward. Well, I had my smartphone times and it's over now. And the pace of it and the attention to the small changes is kind of what I live for. I don't know if you've seen, there's this amazing movie called it's variously called Quince Tree Light or Light of the Quince Tree. I don't know.
Look it up.
It's basically a documentary about the Spanish painter Antonio Lopez Garcia, who I believe is still alive. He's a really strict realist painter, but the movie it's from the early 90s, is about his attempts to paint the quince tree in his backyard through every kind of
I think you mentioned this. I'm looking it up now. The Dream of Light is how they translate it.
Dream of
in the
Light.
US.
Sometimes it's got like 5 different, unfortunately, translations, and it's a little bit hard to find on streaming. If you dig around, you can probably find it maybe on archive.org or somewhere. Yeah. I don't think it's commercially distributed, but I think you dig that, and just this guy's complete kind of also, once again, overused, but monastic, attention to this one task.
Listen, when somebody described a reporter described what I do with the podcast and the newsletter as my monastic devotion to things, I had the nervous ha-ha laughter and then had the shit, he's right. I feel bad, that I've kind of denied that, but yeah, there's.
I think that's a positive.
Yeah, he meant it in a good way, and I was just, I really am. This is what I'm doing on a Sunday afternoon after the sheer amount of insanity that I've gone through for the last couple of weeks is making sure we can bring this to an audience. So.
Yeah, because this is what sustains you, and so you got to make the effort, and like. Anything that's easier or that you can do casually, how much is that really worth?
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah. I think
if it comes so easily, it shouldn't come easily.
Yeah. That is what we have proven pretty adequately for me, for over 600 episodes. You, what did we say, 38 or 39 years of
Yeah, I don't know. I try to count it. Yeah, sometimes
but
40s.
It's all your entire life.
Early teens, I think it set in for good. I mean, I'm turning 54 on Saturday, so, Yeah. So, yeah, roughly 40 years. There's nothing else from at this point. Like, what am I going to pivot to something? Take up a hobby or something.
Dmitry goes corporate.
That's right. Yeah, I'm gonna go for that brass ring. Go for the corner office.
Yeah. Yeah.
No. I mean, I have a very satisfying kind of part-time side gig at a bookstore, which has also been transformative, and it's become it's the focus of. I've started to dip my toe into a new kind of quasi-writing thing, which is about the bookstore, which is like wouldn't be a surprise to anybody,
Sure.
Like,
and it's been a theme in your email, the newsletter that you do, but
yeah,
I wasn't sure if it was evolving into something, and I never want to ask you about, hey, what's your next project? But
no, well, it's now a current project because I made a little like handmade kind of zine, whatever, typewritten book, and just made 30 copies of a zine. It's up in the store. People can buy it, and I think it's going to be a new approach. I'm going to try to. I don't know if I can avoid making books anymore. I keep trying to quit the books, but I love books so much, and I love making them. But I have to make it somehow where the art and the writing is one thing, and that I'm not waiting even for a place in Michigan for months.
Yeah.
It stressed me out, and I can't really justify the expense of what that costs to do because of the way I require the printing to be done. I can't go and do print on demand. Those places can't do what I need,
right.
Making them on my own printer or hand making them, and cumulatively, I think it'll add up to something whenever that is. Right now, it's a 12-page zine,
Yeah.
and it's the start of something,
I'm with you.
And it's about this experience of digging through this piles and piles of endless donated and purchased used books.
Which to me is endlessly fascinating, largely because I have a anecdote about the time I picked up a copy of a novel that I usually pick up extras of to give out to people, and opened it and discovered that it was a copy that I had given to someone that he had sold to the Strand with mean-spirited notes about me in the back as to why I would have liked this book and why he didn't. And that was
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was great. I was just in wow, not only is this his handwriting, there I could see it. There I am. He's and the reason Gil would like something like this is he just doesn't get the blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, I'm buying this copy right now.
I have more than one example of a similar kind of thing. I found my own books in thrift stores at this point.
Yeah.
My published books, which I like because that means it's gone through the whole digestive system of the culture and gotten shit out the other end. And I love thrift stores.
Yeah.
I go to thrift stores all the time for various reasons, but also, I discovered a book that I signed to a person, and I found it in a second-hand store, clearly spine uncracked, never even read. And that led to the end of that friendship. Yeah.
Well, again, in my case, I've learned I can't hold anything against people too much, but I get where you're coming from.
Well, this is an particular case.
Yeah, I figured there's probably more reason for it. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, like in my the big cull that I'm pretty much done with now, there's a stack of books here that I can't get rid of that are all inscribed to me. Yeah. Because I can't do that to other people.
No, that's the same thing. I've got a pile in my storage space under the stairs here that are I'm never going to read this, but
two-thirds of them I would love to get rid of, but I can't.
Yeah.
Not until I'm dead. Somebody else can take them then, but I can't do that. But this store, which is called Tangible Books, it's in my neighborhood. There's over 60,000 books. And it's just a completely alive organism that changes depending on whatever comes through the front door.
Well, next time I was hoping to get out to Chicago this summer, but again, work just annihilated me. But next time I'm out there, A, I'll hit Tangible. B, you and I'll sit down for real conversation. So
that'll be great.
Because this is good, but this is still us staring at screens. So
it's true. Yep. Yeah. It helps, when it's somebody you've talked to before, it's easier. When it's somebody you haven't, sometimes it's a little bit more of a challenge.
Yeah, you end up walking over somebody else because you can't quite figure out your tones and rhythm with each other. But what have you learned from the your own podcasting experience or experiences?
It's a real mixed bag. I think I've had some really good experiences. I mean, what helps me is, I've done enough journalism now, and so if I invite somebody to record a thing with me, I'm pretty familiar with what they do
Yeah.
and reasonably sure that I can, I can prompt them to say things. I mean, my job there is very different than in this instance. I try my best to stay out of the way and not to make it about me. And I think I'm reasonably successful. I did one. I think the last interview one I did was with this writer Eugene Martin, who I would like. That's been my big sort of reading discovery this year.
Yeah.
He's written 5 books. He's in his mid-60s, but he's published sporadically, mostly with small presses up until the last couple. And he reached out to me because I reviewed one of his books. And that's what kind of led eventually to a recording.
Was it a good review? I'm kidding.
Oh, yeah.
How dare you, son of a bitch, I'm coming to your... Yeah.
I've had a few of those.
Yeah,
there's some people that are not thrilled with me, but I strive to be a straight shooter. I don't have agendas.
Yeah.
I react the way I react, just to the art, not to the person. But yeah, I ended up having a pretty good talk with him, and I think what I can do, at least as an interviewer, is usually get people that are reticent or not natural talkers to talk.
Yeah.
That I can say I'm able to do. But yeah, unlike you, the podcasting, the interview thing, I enjoy it, but it's about the 7th or 8th thing in my life.
You've got your art to make. I've got mine. I'm not going to rank them or anything. So, but it's it's just one of those things where you realize over time that you pick up skills and like I say, that moment of, oh, that's when I figured out blah, blah, blah. It's usually kind of rewarding when you realize that you've kind of leveled up or at least, developed something or, figured out a new way of approaching things.
No, I mean, I love this medium. This kind of free-form, long, digressive conversations is, it's definitely my jam,
Yeah.
I don't like the ones that are just trying to shill or like that's a junket.
Yeah.
They're promoting a product,
Yeah. The other person hasn't even encountered, read, whatever. Yeah.
Right. They're reading. You can clearly know that some unpaid intern gave them some bullet points,
Yeah. No, this is part of my ongoing panic every single week. How will I put this together?
Yeah. So it worked out because you had that book of mine from whatever you got it a month or two ago.
It's numbered. I'm number 50 something here. Let me see. 53, if that helps with whenever you ship them out.
The number of the book. Yeah. So I don't know. Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what comes next. Something it'll definitely be connected to this bookstore, one way or another.
You know me. I'm looking forward to it. So if it turns into zines that end up becoming compiled into something bigger, or whatever the hell I'm doing with that zine thing, or whatever somebody else is doing in terms of making art, I'm glad it's coming out. So.
Thank you.
Oh, cool, man. Yeah. We'll, I'm sure we'll end up talking in the next couple of months, and we'll end up sending, snarky emails or texts to each other in the weeks ahead.
Yeah, for sure. And look forward to a post. I wrote you a postcard this morning.
Oh, good.
So I'll put it in the mail.
I'm 3 postcards behind on my daily practice because of the conference last week. I didn't send anything this morning, so I've got 2 sitting on the desk, and tomorrow mornings will be the next one.
I imagine you're wearing the hair shirt right now, or like going to walk on a bed.
I've learned not to beat myself up over it because I know I'm going to catch up with them at some point. It's just that right after this, I'm off to San Diego for 2 days, and then a red eye back here, and then more business, and then all this other stuff. And it's like, I can't do everything. I can pretend I can do everything, and you guys all get fooled into think I can do everything. But really, it catches up at some point. So.
Yeah. We know about you and your Turing test.
I've been running up the score on that for 53 years, man. Anyway,
cool.
Yeah, but thanks for coming on, and thanks for making this book. It's I've seen your work since you first reached out to me, which is, oh my God, like 10, 12 years ago, maybe 2014.
Yeah, it's been a little while.
Yeah. And so, seeing it together, having only been to your place once, I think, to see some of the art,
Yeah, you went to my previous apartment, and it was in Bridgeport, but it was the first apartment. Yeah, I remember.
Yeah. This is, it's a good portable studio, I guess.
Thanks.
Cool.
Thanks.
Thanks for coming on, and we'll talk in the weeks ahead.
Sounds like a plan. Thanks, Gil.
And that was Dmitry Samarov. Go get his new book, Making Pictures is How I Talk to the World. It's at his site, dmitrysamarov.com. That is DmitrySamarov.com. Don't worry, I will have links to that in the show and episode notes for this one. His site is great. It's got a ton of pictures of his art, which, as we talked about, seeing the stuff on a screen is not the same as seeing it live or even seeing it in the book. But there's also links to his previous books, which I've enjoyed and which we've talked about on the show, like Old Style, Soviet Stamps, and Music to My Eyes. And there'll be links to his new zine project, and you can find out where his art is showing and what festivals or readings he's going to be at. Now, Dmitry, for reasons we've gone into in the past, does not have a social media presence, but he does make a couple of podcasts that you should check out. Who You Know, which is HUUKNOW, and That Horror Cast with Mallory Smart. You should also definitely sign up for his weekly newsletter, which is at letter.dmitrysamarov.com. I really enjoy that. It's a great mix of his writing, art, links about what he's up to or where he's showing. Go sign up for that. You get a new one every Monday. It's good. Now, you can support the Virtual Memories Show by telling other people about it. Let them know this show comes out every week with interesting conversations with fascinating cultural folks. You can also help out the show by telling me what you like and don't like about it, or who you'd like to hear me record with, or what movie or TV show or book or piece of music or theater or art exhibition or whatever you think I should turn listeners on to. And you can do that by sending me an email, by sending me a postcard or a letter. My mailing address is at the bottom of the newsletter I send out twice a week, or by leaving a message on my Google Voice number, which is 973-869-9659. That goes directly to voicemail, so you don't have to worry about getting stuck in an awkward conversation with me. And messages can be up to 3 minutes long. So if you go longer than that, it'll cut you off. Just call back, leave another message. And let me know if it'd be okay to include your message in an upcoming episode of the show. You might have something interesting to share with listeners, but I'd never run something like that without the speaker's permission, so let me know. Now, if you got money to spare, don't give it to me. Buy stuff from Dmitry. Go support individuals or institutions in need. There are other people who need money more than I do, who need your money more than I do. You can find individuals through like GoFundMe, Patreon, Kickstarter, Crowdfunder, Indiegogo, different crowdfunding platforms like that. You'll find people who need help making rent, medical bills, veterinary bills, car payments, getting an artistic project going. There's people who just a few dollars from you might make a real difference in their lives. So, try and find those and help them out. Now, when it comes to institutions, I give to my local food bank and World Central Kitchen every month. I make targeted election contributions. There are other things you can do, like Planned Parenthood, Freedom Funds, Poor People's Campaign. There are a lot of things out there that, if you got a few dollars, you might be able to make a difference in this world. So I hope you will. Our music for this episode is Fella by Hal Mayforth, used with permission from the artist. You should visit my archives to check out my episode with Hal from the summer of 2018 and learn more about his art and painting. And you can listen to his music at soundcloud.com/Mayforth. And that's MAY4TH. And that's it for this week's episode of the Virtual Memories Show. Thanks so much for listening. We'll be back next week with another great conversation. You can subscribe to the Virtual Memories Show and download past episodes at the iTunes Store. You can also find all our episodes and get on our email list at either of our websites, vmspod.com or chimeraobscura.com/VM. You can also follow the Virtual Memories Show on Twitter and Instagram at VMSPod, at virtualmemoriespodcast.tumblr.com, and on YouTube, Spotify, and TuneIn.com by searching for Virtual Memories Show. And if you like this podcast, please tell your pals, talk it up on social media, and go to iTunes, look up the Virtual Memories Show, and leave a rating and maybe a review for us. It all goes to helping us build a bigger audience. You've been listening to the Virtual Memories Show. I'm your host, Gil Roth. Keep reading, keep making art, and keep the conversation going.